And making such bad decisions, I just kept making them, including marrying a man who did not believe in God. Turns out he was abusive. So getting black eyes and bruised ribs and kicked and knocked around, that was normal. For me, it was normal as a child. It became normal as an adult. It's very sad that we don't realize if we just had God, that all of that can be done away with. We don't need all that stuff. In fact, it's bad for us, actually, but we're trying to fill up holes. I call it being wholehearted, because we're trying to pack up those holes in our spirits that should be packed with God. And once it's packed with God, everything else is wonderful. It'll all work out, but I didn't know it then. A lot of people still don't know it. I've prayed for testimonies in churches like this, and like my brothers, that people get to know it so they don't have to suffer like I did. So, married an abusive man, went through about years of being knocked around, kicked around. It was just ridiculous and sad and pathetic. And finally, I got so tired of that, I figured either he'd kill me one day or I'd kill him. If I killed him, I'd lose my children. Did not want that to happen, so we ran away. I called it twos. I had 2 boys, 2 suitcases, and had managed to save $200. And I ran away to Richmond, Virginia. We're originally from Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. My brother was here. He was a young minister, and I had a sister and her husband and a niece here. So we ran away. We don't start life all over. But of course, I was still an atheist. Still did not believe. In fact, I actually did what people do. I asked God to help me get out. And once I got out, I didn't have to be afraid. Because I'm going to tell the truth. He can hear me. The eyes of God are everywhere, okay? No sense in hiding it. So I did not want to hear it. Now, my bishop would come over to the house. He'd try to talk to me, try to minister. I was happy if he talked about Star Trek, because I always liked Star Trek. So I would talk about that. Or if he invited me to dinner. But I didn't want to hear about God. My eyes would just roll back in my head, or I'd find an excuse to put it out. Looking back, I know he was continually praying for me, and I know he was sowing seeds, though I didn't realize that at the time. I just pretty much blew him off. I didn't want to hear it. Well, because I was a woman who did take my motherhood, my parenthood very seriously, he was taking my sons to church. And I decided, let me go, find out what my kids are hearing, what kind of propaganda are they feeding them. So I'd be aware. And he knows me very well. He's my brother. He knows I love music. So he invited me to a church service that had a children's group. Do you remember that from Africa? And boy, they started singing, and it was like tonight. I wasn't shouting yet because I thought that was foolish too. I like anything about church. But I was moving, and it was stirring, and the Spirit was moving in me. And when they gave the salvation call, yes, God, I believe. You raised your son Jesus for the dead. And I got up there and got saved. Amen? Amen. God saved. But I got to tell you something. Matthew, is it 6:24? I have this scripture right. No man can serve 2 masters. You either hate one and love the other. That's all there is to it. You can't be on the fence. You can't have a leg over here and a leg over there. So even though I got saved, going to church now, start going to church, we're going to church on Sunday, got my kids. But during the week, I was in darkness. And I don't just mean, well, I was a baby Christian, I was. But one of the things I had a lifelong love affair with was horror. Anything spooky. Ghost stories. Movies. Whatever was scary, I ate it up. Ate it up. I had every book Stephen King ever wrote. I don't know if any of you are familiar. He's a very famous horror writer. And I had the hardback, wasn't the cheap copy either. I had the good copies. Loved it. So I'm going to church on Sunday, but Monday through Friday, Saturday, maybe Saturday night, I'm just getting the thrill of being spooked. I thought it was a thrill. Because I've always been fascinated by the supernatural. It's just the wrong supernatural. Amen? There is, the Bible has plenty in there to excite you. You just got to open it and read it and get into it, but I wasn't doing that. So I often look back and think, the experience that I went through, would I have had if I had had sense enough back then to simply get in God's camp and stay in His camp? And if he's after you and God hates, I'm sorry, the devil, well, God probably does hate him. The devil hates God. So if he hates God, you know he hates us from God. And he will use any means, it's like by any means necessary, to mess you up and jack up your faith. Well, looking back, I believe this is what happened to me. See, I called myself getting serious. I was saved. I wanted to learn all about God, but I was still feeding myself this dark material.
Yes.
And I like to think of it as, if you've ever seen one of those movies, Lifetime or one of those stations, and the person is in a gang, male or female, they're in a gang, and then they decide to get out the gang finally. And the gang members just bum rush the cat, beat him up, terrorize him, drive-bys, mess up with his family. They do that because they figure the misery they put you through will be so bad, you'll turn back to the gang rather than put up with all the hurt and the pain and the fear that's going on. Well, that's what the enemy did to me.
Amen.
I went through a 2-year period between 96 and 98, where the enemy, I didn't even know it was the devil. I thought either my house was haunted or I was insane, losing my mind. I didn't like the idea of losing my mind because anything that threatened to take my children from me, that was a whole other fear. But I began to go through manifestations that are a whole lot scarier than that poltergeist or what is that movie I can't stand? The Paranormal Activities. Hate the movies. I hate them because I know it's no joke. That's why I don't like them. Okay? And none of that stuff is a joke. So I would hear growls in my ear, hot breath, presence sit on my bed, a hand or a paw, whatever it was, in the middle of my back. I mean, I'm talking serious. Not a joke at all. I was in a constant state of terror. I would go to work and I was relieved to go to work because at work I didn't have to hear the voices. Didn't follow me there. But as soon as I would go home, in fact, I would drive and get right to the corner of my block. The hairs on my arm would start to stand up because God knows what I was going to, find out or hear or feel or see when I got home. I could have won an Academy Award because my children didn't know it. Of course, they were young. That helps. But also I faked it in front of them. I didn't want to lose my children, so I didn't want anyone to know. I did not even tell my brother. I didn't tell anybody what was going on. Again, either I was crazy or the house was haunted, and who was going to believe me? So I would say for 2 years, I'm not sure when I ever slept. Because if I fell asleep, something would happen, noise, talking, growls, seeing shadows dart around the room. Things would happen to frighten me so bad that I'd have to wake right back up again. So many times I fell asleep at my desk at work because that was the only time I felt comfortable. And going to church, felt comfortable there, but I just felt alone. I didn't realize I was in the right place. I had access to help, but I didn't even know enough back then to say, God, help me through this. I didn't know anything about spiritual warfare. I hadn't really read Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 to 18. I didn't know God gives us mighty weapons to fight off that kind of mess. I was just suffering alone. So, the devil's trying to get me to stop. I didn't know that's what it was. This is in hindsight. But I have over the years thought of several things. John 10:10 tells us the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. God comes. Jesus came to give us life so we would have abundantly. But the enemy is the exact opposite. And I realized looking back, my love of horror, movies, books, etc., it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. From my youngest memory, I used to sit up and watch that stuff with my mom. So, parents, be careful. Anybody here with kids, watch what your kids look at, what they eat. Because really, the things we listen to, the things we watch and read, we're eating it. We feed our spirits the same way food feeds our bodies. And I have fed myself a steady diet of fear from the time I was old enough to watch TV and read. I think my mother was scared, and so I was company for her. So she didn't have to watch it alone. And so it grew into a fascination, and I'm telling you, it does not have to be fear. It can be pornography. It can be gambling. You can watch television. My brother and I both like comedians. And I enjoy a good joke. My personal ones are very corny, like chicken busted, that kind of stuff. But I really like comedians, but I'm not going to watch a comedian if every other word is MF and GG and come on. And then you're watching, and whether you're sitting somewhere and a curse fly out your mouth, and you wonder where that comes